All right, well, it's been almost a week since SimCity came out, and now that the dust has settled a little bit, I am finally ready to share my review. It doesn't take a genius to see that the launch of SimCity has been a complete and total disaster. EA seems doomed to repeat Blizzard's ill-fated launch of Diablo 3 with yet another case of always online functionality crumbling beneath a decade of anticipation. It's a shame because hidden behind all the technical issues and DRM controversy lies a truly wonderful and charming game. One you probably wouldn't think twice about buying if it weren't for the meddling hands of its publisher. Now, some have called the new SimCity a reboot, and I don't think that's too far off base. The Glassbox engine in particular helps usher the game into a modern era by employing a dynamic 3D camera, allowing you to view your city from any angle. It also makes judicious use of tilt shift, a style of photography typically used to miniaturize its subjects. This works doubly well for a game like SimCity by imbuing the player with a sense of power and omnipotence. There's no shortage of visual details, and small artistic touches have been made everywhere. Seeing graffiti pop up in your city's ghettos, watching the sunrise over your neighbor's hazy smog den, it all adds a very real sense of cohesion to the world, and the inclusion of color filters, including one specifically optimized for the colorblind, let you view that world through many different lenses. These kinds of things might all seem superficial at first, but the degree to which they elevate the experience is downright astonishing. As beautiful as the game looks, the Glassbox engine does impose certain performance limitations, chief among them being city size. When starting up a game, you'll have the option to choose from 8 different regions, each with anywhere from 2 to 16 cities. Players can create their own region, assuming ownership of all of its cities, or play on a shared region with up to 16 others, each with their own cities. The plots of land will vary in size and landscape, but the largest maps are still relatively small, around 2 by 2 kilometers. Same as the medium-sized maps in SimCity 4. On top of that, terraforming is no longer an option, mass transit connections are limited, and natural resources are scarce. The trade-off for this more realistic simulation is that it reduces the amount of freedom you have in how you lay out your city. I wouldn't say that's necessarily a bad thing, but it does create a different dynamic from previous SimCity games. By forcing the player to work with limited resources in a smaller area, choosing where and how to build out your city becomes almost like a puzzle, with you putting down the necessary groundwork and filling in the rest as you go along. I personally enjoyed the more strategic approach this fosters, but I can see why it might make others uncomfortable. If unlimited choices are important to you, then you may be disappointed with what this SimCity has to offer. To its credit, it does have a sandbox mode where all buildings and limited cheats are unlocked from the get-go, but funding is capped at 1 million, a surprisingly easy amount to blow through in a short period of time. Starting up a town in SimCity is as easy as laying down some road, which players can then zone as either residential, commercial, or industrial. Figuring out how much to zone each area is a constant balancing act, and unfortunately, it's not always clear what exactly your Sims want. In addition to the obvious upgrades, many of SimCity's underlying systems have also been given a major overhaul. Much of the game's strategy now revolves around data layers, which give a map-like overview of nearly every measurable facet of the game. Here's where you'll find the happiness levels of your Sims, see where their sewage is getting clogged up, or locate deposits of natural resources. Natural resources especially become a huge part of the game, influencing not just the layout of your city, but its specialization. Specializations are basically just different ways for your city to make money, and you don't have to just choose one, you can do all of them if you like, assuming the resources are there. Obviously, certain ones are going to be more interesting than others, and certain ones are going to cost a lot more money than others. Not every city is built to specialize in everything that the game offers, and that is really where the multiplayer aspect comes into play. Because you can have a city that's more boring and specializes in something like coal mining, and you can use that to fund the lifestyle of a much more interesting city, like tiny Las Vegas, with teeny tiny sim hookers. Ignoring for a moment the online infrastructure that supports it, I actually really enjoyed the multiplayer side of the game. Yes, most of it can be emulated in solo mode by simply controlling several cities of your own, but playing with others adds a synergistic quality to the game that isn't present otherwise. Cities in well-educated regions can cooperate together on great works, vast structures representing the pinnacle of Simoleon intelligence. These take a lot of time to build and require resources well beyond what one city can provide. There's a host of other social features included, most of which offer something of value to the final product. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for the game's always online requirement. To reiterate, I have no problems with the multiplayer portion itself, but the infrastructure supporting it was clearly not designed or tested well enough. If 4 days have passed since the launch of your game and people still can't get in or access their safe cities, that's a problem, one that ultimately could have been prevented. So because we waited to post our review, we have managed to bypass a lot of the game's launch issues. Maxis added a bunch of servers last weekend, they fixed some major performance bugs, and things appear to be running smoothly. Now, because of that, and because of the fact that 7 days of the launch period is a relatively short amount of time in comparison to the lifespan of this game, I will not be taking the specific launch issues into consideration for this review. What I will be factoring in is the root cause of those issues, the need for a persistent internet connection. Now, obviously, there's an added emphasis on multiplayer here, but there's also no logical reason to justify needing an internet connection if you're just playing in solo mode. There's literally no need for it whatsoever. All it's done is create problems and alienate consumers. At the end of the day, SimCity is still an extraordinary experience, but only for those patient enough to accept its flaws. No other game can match the satisfaction you get from watching your city evolve into a bustling seaside resort from just a 2-lane highway. The depth of simulation it provides is utterly engrossing. It may not be the SimCity you grew up with, but it's still well worth your time. I give it a 4 out of 5. So that is my review of SimCity. I'm sure you guys have plenty of thoughts about the matter, so feel free to sound off in the comments below, and please just remember to be respectful. Don't be a dick. Meanwhile, this game is out on PC now with a Mac release planned for this spring, and I'm gonna go play some right now.